Imagine Germany in the winter of 1945. Smoke still curls from shattered rooftops. Streets are cracked and strewn with rubble. A bitter wind cuts through the skeletal remains of once bustling cities. Hunger hangs in the air, mingling with the acrid scent of burned timber and scorched stone. A young German woman walks cautiously along a broken cobblestone street. Her shoes are worn thin, her coat patched in several places. Each step echoes against the hollow walls of abandoned buildings. In her hands, she clutches a small bundle of meager belongings: a scarf, a loaf of bread, a photograph of a brother missing at the front. The weight of loss presses heavily upon her shoulders. Suddenly, the crunch of boots on stone. An American soldier steps into view. His uniform is neat, his gait confident but careful. He carries a small parcel of rations. Their eyes meet for a brief moment. Then, with a quiet smile, he offers her a chocolate bar. She hesitates, suspicion flickering across her face. Enemies had only just become strangers. Trust had been forged in fire and fear, not kindness. Yet she takes it, and in that small, simple gesture, a fragile bridge forms between two worlds. The chocolate bar tastes sweeter than she could have imagined, not for the sugar, but for what it represents: safety, attention, and a fleeting glimpse of hope in a land scarred by war. All around them, the city is silent but alive with the echoes of history, the cries of children, the distant hum of trucks, the murmur of women gathering water or firewood. This moment, small and human, signals the first stirrings of something larger, a quiet revolution of the heart, where thousands of German women would soon discover connection, courage, and even love with the men who had once been their enemies. From these streets of ruin would emerge a phenomenon that historians still study today: the extraordinary story of why German women married American soldiers in such great numbers. And as the snow begins to settle on the broken rooftops, the story begins, not with armies, treaties, or borders, but with a single act of human kindness. Germany, 1945. The war had ended, but the nation lay in ruins. Cities once proud and bustling now resembled graveyards of concrete and steel. Berlin, Dresden, Hamburg, each scarred by relentless Allied bombing. Streets were littered with debris, homes reduced to skeletal frames, factories gutted. Survivors scavenged through the remnants, searching for food, warmth, or anything that might offer a semblance of normal life. The population was staggering in its imbalance. Millions of men had died on battlefields or remained prisoners of war. Many returning soldiers were wounded, physically or mentally, leaving women to manage households alone. Historians estimate that by the war's end, Germany had millions more women than men. Entire communities were reshaped overnight, and traditional social structures struggled to survive. The expectation that a man provided and a woman maintained the home had been challenged by necessity. Women became heads of households, sometimes for the first time in their lives, forced to make impossible decisions to keep families alive. Food shortages were extreme. Rations provided by the Allied authorities were barely enough. Long queues at bakeries and distribution centers were a daily reality. The black market thrived, a hidden economy where cigarettes, coffee, and chocolate, luxuries from American and Allied rations, became priceless commodities. Every gesture of generosity from an occupying soldier, every candy bar or small treat, carried disproportionate weight. These small acts offered not just sustenance but dignity, attention, and a hint of normalcy. The psychological toll was equally severe. Years of dictatorship, fear, and propaganda had instilled both obedience and suspicion. Many women were scarred by bombings, loss of family members, and the relentless pressure of survival. Loneliness permeated homes and streets. But amidst despair, there was also a yearning for stability and human connection. The destruction of the old world created space for new possibilities. Old norms, rigid hierarchies, social decorum, and isolationist thinking began to erode under the pressure of necessity and exposure to new influences. Enter the American occupation. Soldiers of the U.S. Army, initially stationed for enforcement and rebuilding, were soon visible in every aspect of daily life. They patrolled streets, assisted in distribution of aid, and interacted with civilians. Their uniforms, clean and organized, were in stark contrast to the tattered clothing of the local population. Their manners, polite, casual, sometimes humorous, differed sharply from the disciplined reserve of German men. They carried goods that Germans could only dream of: chocolate, canned meat, coffee, cigarettes. The abundance, yes, drew attention, but it was their character, openness, and approachability that captivated many German women. Yet, relationships were not simple. Initially, fraternization was strictly forbidden. Soldiers were ordered not to engage socially with German civilians. Commanders feared that friendships, or romances, might undermine discipline or create political complications. Soldiers were technically off-limits for civilian women. The tension between policy and human instinct quickly became evident. While some soldiers obeyed the rules, others sought small connections, sharing a smile, offering guidance, or simply speaking politely to a passerby. Meanwhile, German women were making choices born of both circumstance and desire. The war had stripped them of certainty. They craved security, yes, but also recognition, respect, and personal freedom. The contrast between American openness and the reserved demeanor of German men created both fascination and emotional opportunity. Conversations that might once have seemed scandalous now felt like lifelines. Simple interactions: an American soldier helping a woman carry water, chatting in broken German, laughing at a small joke, were profound in a world of devastation. The broader societal backdrop was equally important. The church, local authorities, and community elders struggled to maintain order and moral standards. Many Germans judged fraternization harshly. Gossip circulated, reputations were scrutinized. Yet necessity often outweighed judgment. Women worked in factories, collected firewood, searched for food, or visited family graves, all while observing and interacting with the occupying forces. In these moments, new human bonds began to form, tentative yet potent. By late 1945, the conditions were clear: shattered cities, disrupted families, scarcity of men, and a profound yearning for hope and human connection. These factors converged to make post-war Germany fertile ground for relationships that transcended politics, borders, and even lingering animosity. The stage was set for the emergence of a remarkable phenomenon: thousands of German women falling in love with men who had once been their enemies. And in this fragile, tumultuous environment, small personal choices would begin to challenge official policies, shift cultural norms, and lay the foundation for a wave of marriages that would reshape two nations. The story of German women marrying American soldiers cannot be understood from a single perspective. It unfolded on many levels: personal, cultural, tactical, and psychological, each revealing a different layer of the human experience in post-war Germany. For many women, these relationships began in the simplest, most human ways. A smile on a street corner, a helping hand with a bundle of firewood, a shared cigarette or chocolate bar. Diaries and letters from the time reveal a mixture of fear, curiosity, and cautious hope. One young woman wrote of an American soldier who helped her mother carry water from a broken pump. "I had never seen a man treat a woman like that," she remembered decades later. Another recalled dancing at a makeshift officers' club in Hamburg, laughing for the first time in years, feeling life return to her body. These were not acts of convenience. Women were acutely aware of the cultural and political stakes. Yet, amid scarcity and loss, gestures of attention and respect felt monumental. A hand held at a doorway, a polite compliment, or a wink across a crowded street was imbued with a significance that went far beyond courtship. Each encounter carried the weight of survival and the hope for something more: human connection in a fractured world. Occupation authorities initially imposed strict rules. Soldiers were forbidden from fraternizing with civilians. The rationale was simple: control, discipline, and the fear that premature social bonds could complicate governance. The Allied High Command worried that fraternization could undermine both the image of authority and military order. Yet enforcement proved difficult. Soldiers lived among the civilians, sharing the streets, shops, and cafes. Daily routines naturally led to encounters. Commanders had to balance discipline with the practical realities of occupation. Over time, rules softened. By late 1945, the official bans were quietly ignored in many areas, and by 1946, the military allowed relationships and, eventually, marriages, though legal and bureaucratic obstacles remained. This tension between policy and human behavior created fertile ground for stories of love and courage. Soldiers had to navigate the fine line between obedience and desire, and women had to assess risk versus opportunity. These dynamics gave every encounter an intensity born of necessity and uncertainty. Cultural contrasts were stark. German society of the late 1940s was rooted in tradition, restraint, and hierarchy. American soldiers, by contrast, moved with an ease, humor, and openness that seemed revolutionary. Their polite yet casual manners, willingness to joke, and relaxed approach to social interaction captivated women who had endured years of fear and repression. Americans brought more than manners. They brought goods, music, and customs. Cigarettes, chocolate, canned coffee, and powdered milk were rare luxuries. Jazz and swing music echoed through city squares and officers' clubs, a stark contrast to marching songs and nationalist anthems of the recent past. Young German women were introduced to dances like the boogie-woogie, where laughter and playful touch replaced rigid formality. Cars and jeeps rolled through streets for the first time, symbols of modernity and mobility. Each interaction, each shared moment, subtly shifted perceptions of possibility. Not everyone approved. German men, neighbors, and conservative community leaders often viewed these encounters with suspicion or hostility. Gossip spread quickly, and women who associated with American soldiers were sometimes labeled opportunistic or immoral. Soldiers themselves faced peer scrutiny and military oversight, though the human need for connection often outweighed these pressures. Despite opposition, personal bonds proved resilient. Women and men alike navigated the tension between societal judgment and personal desire. Risk and reward existed side by side. Clandestine meetings, stolen conversations, and secret notes became part of daily life. These challenges only intensified emotional stakes, making the eventual unions all the more profound. At its core, the story was about resilience and choice. Women faced loneliness, grief, and uncertainty. Soldiers, weary from combat and displacement, sought connection and companionship. Both sides grappled with guilt, hope, and longing. The decision to pursue a relationship, or eventually marriage, was rarely simple. It involved weighing safety, social repercussions, and personal desire against a backdrop of destruction and scarcity. Love, in this context, was both practical and deeply human. For women, the American soldiers represented security, respect, and recognition, qualities often absent in the post-war environment. For men, the relationships offered a reprieve from the violence and loss of the battlefield. Together, these unions became small acts of defiance against the chaos surrounding them, a reclaiming of personal agency, dignity, and hope. By the fall of 1946, these personal, cultural, tactical, and psychological forces converged. Rules began to change, restrictions lifted, and marriages became legally possible. The stage was set for the decisive turning point in which thousands of German women would leave their homes, cross oceans, and begin new lives with men they had met in the ruins of their country. By the winter of 1946, the tide had turned. After months of persistent requests, petitions, and quiet pressure from soldiers and their superiors, the U.S. military officially lifted the ban on marriages to German citizens. For countless couples, this was more than bureaucracy, It was the opening of a door that had seemed sealed by circumstance and policy. Suddenly, years of waiting, secret meetings, and handwritten letters could bear fruit in a legal and recognized union. The first marriages were carefully documented. Chaplains and officers oversaw ceremonies in small town halls and makeshift chapels across the American-occupied zones. Young women in patched dresses and worn shoes stood beside uniformed soldiers, trembling with nervous excitement. Some held the hands of their mothers, who had seen too much loss to believe happiness could return so quickly. Others clutched letters from absent brothers or fathers, reminders of the world left behind. The vows were whispered amid rubble-strewn streets, in the shadow of buildings still marked by shrapnel and smoke. Preparation for departure added another layer of intensity. Once married, German brides faced the unknown, a transatlantic journey to a country they had only seen in photographs or imagined in letters. Ports like Bremerhaven and Hamburg became temporary gathering places. Hundreds of women boarded ships together, carrying their hopes, small bundles of belongings, and sometimes children born of wartime unions. On deck, the cold wind from the North Sea whipped against their faces as they stared at the endless water. Excitement mixed with terror. Every wave seemed to echo the enormity of the choice they had made. Among the first crossings was the ocean liner SS Argentina, transformed from a troop ship into a vessel for peace and new beginnings. Young women from Germany, Britain, and elsewhere crowded the decks, some clinging to railings, others speaking in hushed tones or reading letters from their husbands. Soldiers who had accompanied their brides waved from shore, some saluting, others simply holding their hands to their hearts. 9 days later, the ship reached New York, its passengers stepping onto solid ground with a mix of awe, fear, and relief. For many, it was the first time they had truly glimpsed the America of their imagination, bright, sprawling, and unfamiliar. The journey itself became a crucible. On board, women formed bonds with one another, sharing advice, comfort, and laughter. Some kept diaries, documenting their emotions with meticulous care. The anxiety of leaving home, the thrill of reunion, the sorrow of parting from family members who remained behind. Every moment carried symbolic weight, as if the ocean itself were testing their courage and commitment. These crossings were more than logistical necessity, they were rites of passage, moments in which the human heart confronted uncertainty and forged resilience. At the same time, bureaucratic processes continued to define the experience. Visas, medical checks, and immigration forms had to be completed, often under stressful conditions. Errors in paperwork, missing documents, or language barriers could delay departures for weeks. Many couples waited anxiously, counting days, exchanging letters filled with longing and reassurance. Yet when the final approvals came, the sense of triumph was palpable. It was not merely a legal victory, it was an emotional one, a confirmation that love could overcome distance, politics, and the scars of war. As these couples disembarked in American ports, the transformation was immediate. Families reunited, soldiers embracing the women they had long corresponded with, children clinging to new mothers, strangers offering kindness to ease initial discomfort. The first steps on American soil were filled with wonder and apprehension. Streets, smells, and languages were unfamiliar. Yet every step forward marked the culmination of a journey both physical and emotional. The act of marriage, once forbidden and fraught with peril, had become the starting point of a new life. Through these crossings, ceremonies, and reunions, a profound truth emerged. Individual courage, human connection, and patience had shifted the course of policy, creating a bridge between nations. What began with a chocolate bar in a ruined German street had transformed into thousands of formal unions, each carrying the weight of hope, resilience, and love. These moments of decision, legal, personal, and emotional, represented the turning point in a story that would forever change the lives of German women, American soldiers, and the families they built together. Life in America for German war brides was both exhilarating and daunting. The moment they stepped off the ships, They entered a world both familiar and strange. Streets buzzed with cars, trolleys, and the clamor of urban life, a stark contrast to the bombed-out streets of their hometowns. Houses were larger, kitchens stocked, and communities organized differently. The promise of abundance and stability was real, but so were the challenges of adaptation. Every day brought new lessons, navigating a foreign language, understanding American customs, and learning to cook unfamiliar foods. Small mistakes, a mispronounced word, a misunderstood idiom, a local joke gone awry, were inevitable, yet they became sources of laughter and bonding with husbands and neighbors alike. Many women initially felt like outsiders. In small towns across the Midwest or bustling cities along the coast, neighbors eyed the new arrivals with curiosity and sometimes suspicion. Some American women bristled at the idea that their hometown boys had returned with foreign wives. Children's schools were unfamiliar, shops sold strange foods, and even casual greetings held subtle cultural nuances. Yet over time, kindness and perseverance bridged these gaps. Communities began to accept them, often drawn by the obvious love and devotion in these marriages. German brides created networks of support, sharing language, traditions, and recipes, helping each other navigate a foreign land while gradually integrating into American life. The emotional landscape was equally complex. Homesickness tugged at hearts, letters from families left behind carried a mixture of longing and reassurance, and memories of wartime loss never entirely faded. Yet the affection and respect shown by their American husbands provided a new foundation. These relationships, built on mutual attraction and admiration, became pillars of stability in a post-war world that had offered so little. Children born of these unions became living symbols of reconciliation, blending German resilience with American optimism. For many brides, holding their newborns was a powerful affirmation that love had created something enduring, tangible, and transformative. In practical terms, the War Brides Act and related immigration policies ensured that these marriages were recognized and that wives could enter the United States outside normal quotas. Yet the law did not shield them from the subtler pressures of adaptation. Everyday life required adjustment, patience, and creativity. Women learned to navigate social expectations, educate children in a new language, and contribute to households while often maintaining connections with families back in Germany. Their resilience was remarkable, and over the years, most built thriving lives, becoming integral members of their communities. The social impact extended beyond individual households. German-American families served as living bridges between nations recently divided by war. Grandchildren with dual heritage grew up embodying a blend of cultures, a constant reminder that reconciliation was possible at a human level even when political tensions remained high. Stories of Thanksgiving dinners, local celebrations, and visits to Germany to meet relatives illustrate the slow weaving of these families into the American social fabric. Each gesture, from teaching a child German lullabies to sharing regional recipes, strengthened the cultural and emotional bonds forged in the aftermath of conflict. By the early 1950s, tens of thousands of German war brides had settled across the United States. The scale of the phenomenon was extraordinary. Cities, towns, and rural communities alike hosted clusters of families who had originated from the ruins of Europe. Historians estimate that over 50,000 German women married American soldiers, joining hundreds of thousands of other international war brides from Britain, Italy, Japan, and beyond. These numbers are more than statistics. They represent countless acts of courage, choice, and human connection. Each story was a testament to the determination of women who risked everything, leaving their homeland, language, and familiar surroundings, to build lives grounded in love and hope. In retrospect, the aftermath of these marriages demonstrates both resilience and adaptation. German brides transformed not only their own destinies but also the communities they joined. They became teachers, mothers, volunteers, and cultural ambassadors. Their integration into American life proved that bonds forged in the most unlikely circumstances, amid rubble, ration lines, and the shadows of war, could endure and flourish. These lives remind us that even after devastation, human connection, respect, and love have the power to create lasting change. The journey of adaptation, perseverance, and contribution naturally leads to a moment of reflection, a meditation on what these stories reveal about humanity, cultural exchange, and the enduring capacity for love to transcend borders and history itself. The story of German women marrying American soldiers is more than a tale of romance. It is a testament to the enduring resilience of the human spirit. In the shadow of destruction, women made choices that defied fear, convention, and uncertainty. They left behind homes and memories, crossed oceans, and embraced a life that was entirely unknown, guided by the simple yet profound desire for love, respect, and dignity. Their courage reshaped not only their own destinies but the social fabric of post-war America. These marriages were living proof that humanity could bridge even the deepest divides. Former enemies became family. Homes once separated by ideology and conflict were joined through shared laughter, meals, and the care of children. The small acts of kindness, a chocolate bar, a helping hand, a polite conversation, reverberated into lifetimes of connection. They remind us that history is not shaped solely by armies and treaties, but by the personal choices of individuals, the quiet acts that ripple outward into profound social impact. The cultural significance cannot be understated. German brides brought with them traditions, values, and resilience forged in hardship, blending them with the optimism and openness of their new homeland. Their children grew up bilingual, bicultural, and uniquely equipped to carry lessons of tolerance, understanding, and reconciliation into the world. Each family represented a microcosm of what was possible when people chose empathy over enmity. At the same time, these stories illuminate the emotional dimensions of history. War leaves scars not only on cities and borders, but on hearts. The choices of these women show that healing is possible, that love and connection can emerge from devastation, and that personal courage can overcome systemic obstacles. The legacy of these unions continues in the lives of their descendants, in the communities they enriched, and in the quiet proof that humanity can triumph over division. As we reflect, one sees a broader truth: the power of love to transform, reconcile, and endure. Tens of thousands of German women, once on the margins of history, made decisions that rippled across nations, forging bonds that history alone could not create. Their journeys remind us that even in the darkest times, hope can take root, and small acts of kindness can become the foundation for extraordinary change. In the end, the story leaves us with a simple, profound lesson: humanity, compassion, and love are stronger than fear, hatred, or the scars of war. From the rubble of bombed-out streets to the bustling towns of post-war America, ordinary people created extraordinary bridges across borders. The lives of German war brides and American soldiers stand as enduring evidence that even the deepest wounds can heal, and that the human heart, resilient, daring, and hopeful, can write its own history.